I used to think abuse was loud, obvious, slam door, bruise, a scream in the night. Dear viewers, welcome to our channel. Subscribe to receive more stories every day. But I learned that the most dangerous kind of abuse is the one that hides behind politeness, that wears a smile, that leaves no marks, or at least none where the world can see them. My name is Elena Foster, and if you'd seen our wedding photos, you'd probably think I'd married a dream. Liam Parker was the kind of man who made people lean in when he spoke. Confident but never arrogant, rich but humble, thoughtful at least in public. He remembered birthdays, brought flowers to my office for no reason, and made the waiters at restaurants laugh. Everyone adored him, especially me. I was 31 when we met, working as a graphic designer in downtown Seattle. He was 5 years older, an executive consultant who always seemed to be flying in from somewhere important. He wore suits like they were second skin, and carried himself like a man who knew exactly what he wanted, and that included me. Our courtship was fast, passionate, intense. Friends said it was a whirlwind, but I was swept away, blinded by charm and seduced by the idea of finally being chosen. He made me feel like I was the only woman in the world, that I was lucky. I didn't realize until later that I'd stopped feeling lucky somewhere around month 6 of our marriage. It started small, of course. It always does. You sure you want to wear that to dinner? Did you really forget to pick up the dry cleaning again? I just think it's funny how you always act like the victim. Funny how quickly you get used to apologizing for things you didn't do. The house he bought before we married, our dream home, was in a quiet cul-de-sac outside Bellevue, surrounded by tall hedges and perfect lawns. The kind of place where people waved but didn't ask questions. Where privacy was prized. Where the walls were thick enough to hide the sound of a raised voice, or a slammed door. I used to love those walls, until they started to feel like a prison. By year 2, I barely recognized myself. My once vibrant laugh had grown quiet. My shoulders were always tense. I stopped inviting friends over. Liam said he preferred it that way. Too many people made the house feel cluttered. When I suggested I might go back to work part-time, he called it ungrateful. Said I was selfish for wanting to leave the house when he was the one bringing in the money. That I didn't appreciate the life he gave me. What life? I lived in a gilded cage, with French windows, an herb garden, and a man who kissed me on the forehead in public and threatened me in whispers at home. The first time he grabbed me, it wasn't dramatic. No punch, no push. Just a grip on my wrist, tight enough to leave a mark, firm enough to let me know who had control. He didn't apologize, just stared at me, cold, distant. And I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. The moment I started keeping secrets about him was the moment I started losing pieces of myself. But I wasn't stupid. I started keeping a journal. I wrote down everything. What he said, what he did, even the things I couldn't quite prove. Then came the threats. If you ever leave, I'll ruin you. No one would believe you. Not over me. You're nothing without me, Elena. Remember that. I tried once, just once, to call the police. He saw the call log and laughed. Said it would be my word against his. That I had no bruises. That I'd probably just overreacted. Like always. So I stayed. Until the night he broke a vase 2 inches from my head. And then calmly swept it up while humming to himself. That was the night I packed a bag. I didn't leave, not yet. But I packed it. And I hid it in the closet. The first glimpse of escape. I didn't know much about my neighbors, except that most of them kept to themselves. One of the houses down the street had gone up for sale 6 months ago. A young woman moved in. Quiet, a little awkward. We'd waved once. I didn't even know her name. But she had a garden. Beautiful one. With pink camellias and tall, leafy shrubs that bordered our backyard. I used to admire it from the upstairs window. One evening I noticed something odd. Camera. Nestled near the fence. Subtle. Blinking red. I assumed it was for garden pests. Or maybe deer. Bellevue had plenty. I didn't think twice about it. Until weeks later when I was sitting in court, My palms sweating, my stomach twisted in knots, and my husband's lawyer stood up and said, "Your Honor, my client is a respected member of this community. Mrs. Foster's claims are emotional, not factual. There is no evidence of abuse. In fact, she stayed in the home for years. If it was truly dangerous, wouldn't she have left?" I could hear people murmuring behind me. Liam sat across from me, calm, polished, wearing the same suit he wore on our second anniversary. He met my eyes and smiled like he was winning. And in that moment, I almost believed he was. Until a knock came at the courtroom door. My lawyer stood, whispered something. The judge nodded. And then a woman stepped inside. Messy bun, oversized cardigan, nervous hands clutching a flash drive. The judge raised an eyebrow. "You are?" "My name is Morgan Keller. I live next door to the Fosters. I didn't know if this was the right thing to do. But my security camera, it's captured some things." My breath caught. Liam's smile faltered. Morgan continued, her voice shaking. "I didn't mean to spy. I just heard yelling sometimes. And I was scared. So I installed cameras for myself. I never thought I'd need to use them for someone else. But I think you should see this." She handed the flash drive to the bailiff. The judge looked at my husband. "Mr. Parker, do you object to reviewing this footage?" Liam leaned forward. "Your Honor, this is completely inappropriate. That woman could have doctored the footage." "Objection noted," the judge said. "We'll review it privately during recess. For now, we'll adjourn until tomorrow." Liam stood quickly, whispering angrily to his lawyer. I just sat there, frozen, watching his mask start to slip. He turned to me once before walking out, his face pale. I looked back at Morgan, and for the first time in 2 years I exhaled. The next morning, court resumed. The gallery was fuller than the day before. Word must have spread. Maybe someone whispered that the perfect couple was crumbling. Or maybe people just sensed the scent of blood in the air. Morgan sat quietly at the back, hands fidgeting, eyes darting down every few minutes like she regretted stepping forward. I wanted to reach out, thank her. But I didn't dare. Not yet. The judge entered. We all rose. Then came the words that changed everything. "I have reviewed the footage submitted by Ms. Keller. And while the court must be cautious when considering third-party recordings, what I viewed last night raised serious concern." My heart pounded. The judge turned to Liam. "Mr. Parker, in one clip dated August 13th, you're seen shouting at your wife in the backyard. The language used was threatening. In another, from September, you're holding what appears to be a wine bottle and throwing it, hard, against the back patio door while your wife stands inside." Liam's jaw clenched. His lawyer leaned over and whispered something too low to hear. The judge continued. "This court takes such footage seriously. It directly contradicts the claim that Mrs. Foster's allegations are unfounded or emotionally exaggerated." For the first time in this entire process, I felt seen. But it didn't last. Liam stood calm as ever. "Your Honor, I can explain." The judge waved him on. "Those incidents, they were part of a single, isolated argument. Yes, I lost my temper. But I was under immense pressure at work. I had just lost a client. I immediately apologized afterward. We even went to dinner later that night. Isn't that right, Elena?" I didn't answer. He smiled faintly. "We have our ups and downs like anyone. But I'm not abusive. My wife, she tends to dramatize things when she's overwhelmed." It was his voice again. That smooth, patronizing tone. Like I was a child who'd misplaced her homework. "Your Honor," my lawyer said, "if I may, we've had the footage authenticated. Timestamp. And we're prepared to bring in Morgan Keller, the neighbor who recorded it, to testify directly to the timeline and her own observations." Liam's smile finally twitched. Then he played his hand. He stood again. "If we're opening the door to third-party testimony, Your Honor, then I'd like to submit a character witness." The judge looked up, surprised. "A witness not previously listed?" "Yes," Liam said. Someone who knows both of us. Then he said the name that made my stomach sink. My wife's sister. Julia Hastings. The knife with a smile. Julia. My younger sister. My former best friend. The one who used to paint my nails in middle school and sneak me candy after breakups. The one I hadn't spoken to in nearly a year. She walked in like she was walking a red carpet. Smooth curls. Designer coat. The kind of confidence that always made me feel like a side character in her spotlight. She hugged Liam before sitting down. And just like that I knew. He'd gotten to her. The testimony began. Elena has always been emotional, Julia said carefully. Even when we were kids, she could be dramatic, prone to exaggeration. She called me crying once about a flat tire and said it felt like her life was falling apart. The courtroom chuckled lightly. I stared at my hands. She continued. I love my sister, but I've also seen her turn small problems into big ones. I remember her calling me one night, saying Liam had trapped her. But when I offered to pick her up, she said never mind. That he made tea. That things were better now. Liam sat beside his lawyer, nodding solemnly like a grieving saint. Julia looked at the judge. I'm not saying she's lying. I'm saying maybe she believes it. But I don't think Liam is dangerous. I wanted to scream. Instead, I turned to my lawyer, whispering, Can I testify again? He gave a subtle nod. The judge called a recess, and when we returned, it was my turn. When the truth finds a mic. Understood. Clammy. Voice type. Your Honor, what my sister said, some of it's true. I am emotional. I do feel things deeply. That doesn't mean I'm unstable. That means I'm human. Paused. Then locked eyes with Julia. And yes, I told her things were better after Liam made tea. You know why? 'Cause I was scared. Because the last time I tried to leave, he blocked the door and said if I walked out, I'd regret it. I turned to the judge. I have notes, screenshots, emails where he manipulated me into staying. And now, thanks to Ms. Keller, we also have video. I reached into my folder, pulled out a printed screenshot from one of the recordings Morgan provided. Liam's face frozen mid-shout, a vein bulging in his neck. I looked directly at him. You told me once that the walls would protect you, that no one would ever see the real you. But you forgot something, Liam. I stepped back. You forgot the neighbor had a camera, a trap in waiting. But Liam hadn't lost yet. That afternoon, his lawyer filed a motion to dismiss Morgan's footage, on the grounds that it was obtained without consent and might constitute an invasion of privacy. There were legal arguments, references to local surveillance laws, and implications that Morgan could be sued for domestic interference. Morgan nearly broke down when she heard. I was just trying to help, she whispered to me in the courthouse hallway. You did help, I said, grabbing her hand. Don't let him scare you. She nodded, but I could see the fear rising. That night, someone tried to break into Morgan's garage. The police said it could have been random, but I knew better. The judge postponed the verdict until a full review of the footage's admissibility could be conducted. Suddenly my case, the truth I thought I had, was hanging by a thread. And Liam knew it. For 2 days I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Liam in that courtroom, smirking, confident, as if this entire trial were just another chess game he was about to win. Morgan stayed at a hotel. Paid for it. It was the least I could do after what happened at her garage. But I knew she wouldn't last long under pressure. Not against someone like Liam. And then came the worst blow. The judge announced, due to privacy concerns and ongoing legal ambiguity around the neighbor surveillance system, the video footage will not be considered formal evidence at this time. I felt the ground vanish beneath me. Liam didn't even bother hiding his smile this time. The footage, the proof. It was gone, from the courtroom's eyes at least. My lawyer tried to pivot. We brought in emails, journal entries, even an ER visit from a year ago when I'd lied and said I slipped on wet tile. It helped, but it didn't prove. The judge began to look tired, wary of the media attention. The case was dragging. And the jury, They were starting to look confused, divided, torn between a polished man in a suit and a woman growing more desperate by the hour. Then, during a recess, Morgan texted me just 5 words. "Meet me. Come alone. Urgent." The file she never meant to keep. Morgan's hands were trembling when she handed me the drive. "I was organizing old clips for backup," she said. "After the break-in, I realized I had duplicates saved to my cloud account. But that's not all." She pulled up a clip on her phone. It wasn't from her backyard. It was from the opposite angle, from across the street. I recognized the view immediately. It was from the house on the corner, the one no one ever talked about, owned by a quiet older man who barely left his porch. People called him Mr. Arthur, and some joked that he was half-blind. He wasn't. He had cameras, hidden, discreet, but they worked, and what they captured made my stomach turn. One clip showed Liam pacing in the yard, yelling into his phone, "She doesn't get to win. I'll bury her if I have to." Another showed him late at night, walking around Morgan's garden, holding something metal. He'd been the one trying to break in. There it was. Not just abuse. Retaliation. Intimidation. Tampering. I looked at Morgan. "How do we get this in?" The final hearing. My lawyer knew we had one chance. We filed an emergency motion, cited public safety, submitted a sworn affidavit from Morgan, and one from Mr. Arthur, who came forward after we explained what the footage revealed. "I didn't think much of it," Arthur told the judge. "But when I heard what was happening, I figured you ought to know." The courtroom was silent as the new clips played. The footage from across the street, the threats, the trespassing, the footage of Liam. His rage, raw, unfiltered, was undeniable. Liam's lawyer tried to object, called it irrelevant, claimed context was missing. But the damage was done. The jury watched stone-faced. The judge called a recess. When she returned, she wasn't smiling. "I've seen enough," she said. "This court no longer finds Mr. Parker's denials credible. The previous order of shared property and spousal compromise is hereby reversed." She turned to me. "Mrs. Foster, your claims are now substantiated. You are awarded full ownership of the shared home, financial restitution, and a permanent protective order. Mr. Parker's conduct will be referred for criminal review." Liam stood shouting, "This is insane. This is not justice." He was escorted out. I didn't look away. Aftermath. The camera never blinks. Took months to rebuild. The house no longer felt like a prison. I painted the kitchen, donated the furniture he picked, opened the windows and played music again. Morgan became a close friend. Mr. Arthur came by sometimes to drop off cut flowers from his garden. I invited them both over for dinner one night and we laughed more than I had in years. I returned to work. Slowly, then full-time. I started designing again. Logos, book covers, even one for a non-profit that supported women leaving abusive relationships. Sometimes people ask how I found the strength. I didn't. Found me. In the form of a quiet neighbor with a garden and a blinking red light. In a man no one noticed, watching from a porch swing. In the evidence no one thought would matter, until it did. And in myself. The woman who packed a bag, who stayed alive, who didn't shrink. Because abuse doesn't always look like a bruise. Sometimes it's silence. Sometimes it's a perfectly set dinner table with a monster across from you. But the truth has a habit of surfacing, if someone is brave enough to point the camera. 6 months later, I stood in front of the same courthouse where I once felt so small. This time I wasn't the one on trial. Liam had been charged with multiple counts of harassment and evidence tampering. He'd taken a plea deal, but his reputation, so carefully polished, was gone. His name was no longer spoken with admiration, only caution. And me. I wasn't just free. I was visible again. I started volunteering at a shelter, designing for women-led startups, even spoke at a panel called Surviving Silence. When I told my story, I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I stood tall. One night I passed Morgan's house. Her garden was blooming. The same small camera blinked under the porch light. Quiet, steady. She saw me looking and smiled. "You know," she said, "I replaced the old drive. But I saved one clip." She handed it to me in a tiny box. No label. No timestamp. When I got home I watched it. It was just me. Sitting alone on the back porch one night months ago. Staring out at the sky. Not crying. Not speaking. Just surviving. In that quiet frame I saw her. The woman I used to be. And the woman I had become. I didn't turn off the clip. I let it run. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is let the world see you and refuse to disappear. She didn't just win the case. She got her life back. Dear viewers, thank you for watching. If you like this story, please subscribe to our channel to receive more stories every day. Share with us what you think of this story and tell us where you're watching from.